Well, hello everybody. It's good to be back, fresh off my trip through the New England territories, little Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts action. Wanted to do a movie review show before too much time goes by. It's been quite a while since the last one. We don't have Brad with us today, but we're going to do this one solo. Three movies to tell you about. One which I saw in the theaters, actually, right at Patriot Place. I am not a Patriots fan, but my cousins live there and in the area, so that was the most convenient movie theater, and that's where we saw our current release. And then we're going to talk about two other movies which were out recently and have gone to DVD streaming now. So let's get to it here, actually. The new one that we're going to talk about here, the one that was released, I think, about a week ago, is the Marvel-based movie Doctor Strange. Now, I will admit I'm not a Marvel comics guy. I've seen, Avengers, so Thor and Captain America, but I was not really too familiar at all with the, other than pictures of him, with the mythology behind Doctor Strange and his relation to the other Marvel superheroes and whatnot. So I was kind of looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. So Benedict Cumberbatch stars in the movie. He plays a very good role. We'll just kind of go through it for those of you who don't know. Basically, Dr. Stephen Strange is a world-renowned neurosurgeon. You kind of see him in action, not in action, in brain surgery action at the beginning of the movie. He is always sought out as the respect of his colleagues, and then one day he gets into a horrible accident. That's always how it goes in a superhero movie, right? And he wakes up discovering that he has very limited, he can walk and everything, he has very limited use of his hands, which were so vital to him. So he is desperately looking for a solution to get all of his abilities back. So he finds out about some kind of a cure, or what he thinks is a cure, in a lost city called Kamartaj in Nepal, in the Himalayas. So he goes there, and he meets a lot more than he bargained for. He basically he gets introduced by a man named Mordo. I guess this means a lot more to the Marvel people, and he gets to meet a lady known as the Ancient One. She doesn't look too ancient in the movie. She's bald, mind you, but she's played by Tilda Swinton, who's a very interesting actress. She does all sorts of unique roles. She does very well with this one. So basically, we discover that she is some kind of a sorceress, and her home, her habitat, is basically home to a lot of magic artifacts, and Doctor Strange is made to learn from her. And of course, at first he is very skeptical, but then he eventually learns the ways of her of her order, and he's assisted by Mordo and others, and there's a humorous, very stout-faced man named Wong, who is the librarian there. So basically, the crux of the movie is he goes there looking for a cure, and he ends up having to save the world. Basically, there's a group of evil people known as the oh boy, I know they're from the Dark Dimension. I forget. Oh yes, Caecilius. They're led by a man named Caecilius, and there are all sorts of battles between the Ancient One and Caecilius's people. The scenes of the battles look really cool. I mean, it kind of reminds you of Inception. Like they can turn areas of rooms or cities into like dimensions that are not affected by time, and they can have battles in which other people can't see, and they could turn buildings on the side, and you can see the masonry in the buildings rotate. It makes for very good effects. So a lot of good battles, and I think everyone played a good role. Just as more perspective, there's Rachel McAdams. She's in the movie. She plays one of the colleagues of Doctor Strange. She comes into play more at the beginning and more towards the end of the movie. Won't tell you how, but they kind of end up back in New York. The three sanctums that are supposed to protect the universe are in New York, Hong Kong, and London. So you get very good change of venues through the movies. A lot of good action, a lot of humorous sequences. It's kind of funny, like towards the beginning when Doctor Strange doesn't really know what he's doing, and the others are doing this to conjure up magical fire spells and everything, and he's like screwing up. So a little bit Harry Potterish there. Not that I'm a Harry Potter fan, but I enjoyed it actually. The only detriment was some of the action scenes were just a little too crazy. They just went too much all at once to absorb 100 miles an hour when maybe you were hoping they'd only be about 75 or so. But I enjoyed it. I think all the actors were good. Scenes, change of venue, the plot is very good. Might be a little difficult to follow at times. Apparently, I missed 2 end credit scenes. A mid-credits scene and an end credits. One of which kind of ties Doctor Strange to the other Marvel people. One of the other Marvel people. So I'll leave that for you to discover. So on the whole, I'm going to give Doctor Strange 3.5 stars. It should be in the movies a while longer. I think it only debuted this week, so you have a little bit of time. Highly recommend. If you could see it in 3D, all the better. All the better. And give it a shot. You'll like it. All right, moving on to movie number 2. I saw this it had to be about a month and a half ago in the theater. No, maybe 2 months ago in the theaters. I had heard about it, I think it was like our second choice that evening. It's technically it's a horror movie. I thought of it more as kind of like a psychological thriller with a lot of brutality in it, and it's called Don't Breathe. So it stars no A-list people per se. This gentleman named Stephen Lang. He's been a character actor for many years, but the premise is basically that there's these 3 kids named Rocky, Alex, and Money. Now, Rocky's a girl, so don't be confused by that. Basically, they break into houses for a living, steal money, etc. The usual stuff. They've targeted a few people. Now they are targeting this man. We never know his name in the movie. He's simply known as the Vet or the Blind Man. It's kind of implied that he might be a Gulf War vet, but they don't really say what war he's from. He looks a little older, but he is blind. And they're basically targeting him because he has $300,000 in a safe in his house. So he also has a rather vicious dog. So they head out in the evening to break into his house. They start by sedating the dog. They get into the house and they immediately realize that this man can, the other senses make up for the blindness. So as they go through the house and everything, he eventually, just to make a long story short, he makes mincemeat out of, won't give too much away. He does away with one or more of them. And it's just from end to end of this movie, it's just a thrilling trip through the house. You don't really leave the house at all once they're in, but a lot of the movie is very dark. That's kind of a petty annoyance, but when you see his face with the eyes, the way he looks in the dark, it makes him all the more gruesome. And they get to the money kind of, but they find it's not going to be easy to get out of the house, and the dog comes into play again. It's a Rottweiler, and it's not very nice. And that's all pretty good for the first half of the movie. And then what really kicks it into gear is you don't really know who to sympathize. You're kind of sympathizing with the blind guy a little bit at this point, but something happens at about roughly the midpoint way of the movie, which really kicks it into gear, a surprise twist that kind of changes your perception of the blind man vet. And from that point on, I think that there's about 3 or 4 more plot twists. Basically, in a nutshell, they can't get rid of this guy. And you'll have to see what happens by the end. But it's incredibly scary. Jump out of the edge of your seat. Kind of brutal at times. You sort of one of those movies where you just don't quite know who you're rooting for, the burglars or the victim. But I would really, if you're into this sort of movie, if you're not into this movie, by no means into this type of thing, by no means do not see this movie. But if you like a good psychological thriller that borders on horror with a little bit of brutality, absolutely check out Don't Breathe. Uh, Again, the main character actor Stephen Lang, really good. Jane Levy as Rocky, the girl Rocky, she's good. The dog was good, everything. So I have to give this one 4 stars without a doubt. It is now on, I believe it is out to DVD, but I know it is out streaming, possibly on Amazon, but we will double check that to be sure. So Don't Breathe gets 4 stars. Okay, so we went from a Marvel movie to a horror thriller movie, and now we go to a comedy. So a couple of months ago, me and my high school friends, we get together every so often to see movies. I think that we saw Don't Breathe as well, but we also, before that, had seen this rather funny movie starring Kevin Hart and The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. It is called Central Intelligence. And I thought it was, I really didn't know what to expect, but it turned out to be, for a comedy movie, it had a lot of plot to it. It was a lot of fun. So basically, the movie starts out where they flash you back, way back to ancient times, 1996. And you see sort of Kevin Hart sort of plays I forget the name of the character. I think oh boy, I'm not going to remember the name, but basically he is sort of the school jock, and he's kind of assembled senior year in front of everyone. And these bullies drag this rather fat, homely looking dude into the gym, out of the locker room, and they throw him naked in front of everyone, which back in 96 was praised. Now it would be frowned upon somewhat. But then we're kind of left there, and it's like 20 years later, flash forward, and Kevin Hart, the jock guy, has kind of a mundane life, works as an accountant, and gets a Facebook message from a fellow named Bob Stone. So he goes to meet him, and turns out it's Little Robbie, the guy who, formerly Big Robbie, who was the guy that they bullied on the gym floor. His name back then, real funny, Robbie Weirdick. Now his name is Bob Stone. And they seem to hit it off pretty well after 20 years. They're hanging out, and he asks if he can crash at the house of the Kevin Hart character. And so he knows that he's an accountant, so Bob Stone asks him if he could trace some accounts for him or check on some online accounts, which he does, and they all go to bed, and then The Rock leaves in the morning, and that's when the fun starts. Some CIA agents show up and say he's some kind of international, that he's trying to sell some codes to international terrorists. And initially, Kevin Hart complies, and then The Rock comes back and he says, "No, no, no, I'm trying to catch the international terrorists. I'm the good guy." And then the other guys are back and saying, "No, no, he's not. He's a bad guy. He's trying to fool you." So the whole movie's kind of going back and forth, and really funny action scenes. It's funny because wherever Kevin Hart is, like The Rock always pops up. Bob Stone rather always pops up like by surprise. Like he goes to a marriage counseling session with his wife, and there's The Rock. Bob Stone as doubling as the marriage counselor, and it takes you through a lot of good action scenes. It's very funny, Kevin Hart fumbling with a gun. He ends up shooting someone, doing the old high five and all that. It's enjoyable. I would recommend it. Keeps you laughing throughout. Drags a little bit once or twice, but that's somewhat forgivable. And our old friend Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad comes into play towards the end of the movie. And also, just as an aside, the CIA agent who keeps questioning him through the movie, she's played by Amy Ryan. I forgot her name in the movie again, but she's kind of funny. She's got that like stone-faced look as she's interrogating him, and she's pretty good. So good acting in this one. Very humorous plot, keeps the movie going. You get a lot of belly laughs out of it. Definitely enjoyed it. Give this one 3.5 stars as well. So that completes the 3 for 3 tract of good movies today. And that is also out there somewhere on streaming. And I think it's also on Amazon. And it is out there on DVD as well. So in summary today, we had Doctor Strange, which gets 3.5 stars. We have Don't Breathe, the action horror thriller, which gets 4 stars, and we get the humorous comedy Central Intelligence, which gets 3.5 stars. So hopefully we'll have a few more movies for you in the future, and we'll have Brad back the next time. And until then, bid you farewell.